Number 6. National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation. You may be asking yourself, why? Why would anyone put this movie on their list? And how could this movie possibly be considered a classic? Well, get ready to have your mind blown because I'm going to tell you why this movie surprisingly won me over. Clark Griswold wants to have the perfect family Christmas, but his wife tells him that her family is going to spend Christmas with them. Add to that, Clark's family is also coming to spend the holidays with them. So it'll be triple the pressure of Clark not only trying to make this year's Christmas special, but also his wife's and his family's as well. What can possibly go wrong? Well, if you are a Griswold, then your vacations are anything but normal. There are people out there who don't like these vacation movies. Yes, including the 2015 one. And I do kind of understand why. It's because of Clark himself. He's the kind of person who is ignorant, delusional, arrogant, selfish, and at times completely clueless. May I remind you that this is the same guy who, in the first vacation, he kidnapped his entire family to take them on a vacation to a theme park no one wanted to go to. In this movie, at least they try to make him a more relatable human being. Here, he is trying everything in his power to make Christmas special, putting up 25,000 lights in his house, inviting his cousin Eddie and his family over, adding to the pressure of trying to please all three families at the same time, takes them sweating, and above all else, try to be as patient as possible with everyone, without going insane. Oh, and I forgot to mention there's also this subplot where Clark is trying to get a Christmas bonus so that he can put up a swimming pool in his backyard, and once you do find out whether or not he actually gets the Christmas bonus, his reaction, oh man, it's funny. I really don't want to spoil it, but you probably have seen the scene on YouTube anyway, so you probably already know what that reaction is. The other characters have their own chance to shine as well. Clark's cousin Eddie is the kind of person who, well, his attitude reminds me of someone who's klutzy, rude, unfunny, and completely annoying, but he's not really aware of it. For some strange reason, he became the focus of a sequel, Cousin Eddie's Island Adventure, and I don't know why. As for Clark's family, well, the wife just kinda goes along with everything, but remains optimistic and supportive of her husband, in the same way that Marge remains faithful to Homer, despite how unpredictable and clumsy he can be. Juliette Lewis, as the daughter, doesn't care about family get-togethers, and the son tries to understand his father, but knows that he is severely flawed. The other members of the family do have their moments of greatness as well. I don't really know who most of them are, but I do recognize two members of the cast, E.G. Marshall and Doris Roberts. Doris Roberts you may know as well, she was in that one TV show that everybody really liked. Now, I think I should probably explain why this movie is considered a classic. Well, let's start at the beginning. There are two openings to this movie, an animated credit sequence and a interesting car chase, which actually sets you up in the right mood. Like, yeah, this is not gonna be your average family-friendly Christmas special. This is not Muppet Family Christmas, which actually was kinda decent. No, this is Christmas Vacation. One of the themes of Christmas is spending time with your family. I think that this movie complements it nicely, but that idea is taken to a new level. Like, yeah, your family may be crazy, but there's a reason why you're all together. Think of the Addams family. They were a strange family, yet they didn't care. It didn't let them bother them. They were who they were. The Griswolds are who they are. The wife's family are who they are. And Cousin Eddie's family are, well, who they are. It doesn't matter how you spend your holidays, what matters is that you're all together. I'm really trying hard not to spoil everything about this movie. I don't even know if I spoiled even like a third of it, but I do want to at least try to explain. Oh, I forgot to mention two other characters. Their next door neighbors. The wife is actually played by Julia Louis-Dreyfus, who both of them hate the Griswolds. They hate them, and for some reason they're getting the short end of a stick for Griswold's shenanigans. I think one of the reasons why it's become a classic now is because it's gotten better with age. They have become tradition, but I understand that these movies are not for everyone. But this one I actually discovered several years ago, and I've watched it every year ever since. Another reason to watch this movie is because of the writer, John Hughes. The writer and director of The Breakfast Club and Ferris Bueller's Day Off wrote Christmas Vacation. A lot of people have talked about this movie before, so I'm gonna keep this relatively brief. Another reason why this movie won me over was because of how unpredictable it was. You don't exactly know what's gonna happen with his family, and yet you somehow kind of expect something to happen. It's just a very crazy feeling whenever you watch this movie. Like most good Christmas classics, they get better with time. And this one definitely has a reason to be on the list. Okay, sorry about the awkward edits, but I want to make an announcement before we continue. I ran into a complication while editing this video. I had 2 other movies I wanted to add, but there are only 5 more entries. What do you do when you come across a situation like this? Well, what I decided to do was put them in. Yep, we're gonna have some ties on this list. I really just couldn't choose between them. They were just that good, and I wanted to add them in because I respect them that much. So enjoy 2 entries in 1. We now return to the video in progress. Number 5. Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. Do I even really need to explain this one? I mean, never mind the fact that I already mentioned how Frosty the Snowman there wasn't a whole lot to say, but can I just talk about this one for a minute? Because remember how I was saying that in Christmas Vacation it was partially about misfits? No. Christmas Vacation is not about misfits. This is. The story is told by Burl Ives, who's a storytelling snowman. Basically, it brings the song of Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer to life. I mean, everyone knows the song, right? A reindeer with a red nose that glows. How he went from not being able to join the reindeer games to helping Santa guide his sleigh through a foggy Christmas Eve. Of course, to make it special, as usual, they add characters and story elements that weren't in the original song. Like an elf who wants to be a dentist instead of a toy maker working for Santa Claus, an explorer named Cornelius who's alone in the world, and misfit toys that reside on an island hoping to be played with. These toys believe that kids don't want to play with toys with abnormalities, like a train with square wheels, for example. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention there's also an abominable snowman who will become relevant by the end of the story. Normally, I would criticize changes like this because none of these characters and story elements were mentioned in the original song. But for some reason, and I cannot explain this, the Island of Misfits Toys, Elf who wants to be a dentist, Cornelius, the abominable snowman, the Burl Ives snowman, all of it works. The whole idea behind Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer is that it's all about misfits. Rudolph's a misfit because of his red nose, the elf is a misfit because he wants to be a dentist instead of a toy maker, the Island of Misfits Toys, they're all misfits because they have something about them that they believe that kids don't want. Anybody who has ever been a misfit can relate to it in a very personal way. I can relate to it. You can probably relate to it. Everybody can relate to it in some form or another. Out of all of the Rankin specials that have that animation, that stop motion animation style, this one is more polished than the other ones, meaning that it flows better than some of the other specials like Santa Claus is Coming to Town. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention something. There are some original songs in this. The songs are fine. They're fine. I don't have a problem with them at all. I actually like them. We Are Santa's Elves, the Island of Misfit Toys theme, Silver and Gold, We're a Couple of Misfits. A lot of them are really good. At least I remember them. At least more than other Rankin Bass specials like Here Comes Peter Cottontail, for example, where I don't remember a single song from that special. Overall, it's a staple of a holiday with a universal message. No Christmas collection should ever be without it. And on the same entry, Miracle on 34th Street, the original. Edmund Gwenn won an Oscar for portraying Kris Kringle, who 100% believes that he is the one and only Santa Claus. Maureen O'Hara is the organizer of the annual Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade, a tradition that is still going on today. Her daughter, played by Natalie Wood, doesn't believe in fairy tales, let alone Santa Claus. The reason is because her mom believed in realism, and not to spoil children with imagination and childhood stories. After doing so well in the parade, Kris is chosen to be the mall Santa Claus. But then things start happening, making us wonder, is he legitimately Santa Claus or is he crazy? This original story, made in 1947, touches on another aspect of the holidays, one we tend to not talk about: the overblown commercialism of Christmas. It's all about buying and selling, making a buck over stuff that people may not necessarily need. It also addresses the fact that sometimes people feel lost when it comes to Christmas. People are forgetting about what the magic of Christmas is really like. Chris says that Christmas is not just a day, it's a frame of mind. Nowadays, all people care about is things being bigger, better, and more high-tech. Never thinking about joy and happiness and appreciating what you have. Oh, that is still true today. The movie is set in motion through a misunderstanding. At least, most of it is. All Chris wants to do is spread cheer to children and unintentionally winning over skeptical adults, and yet some deem him a complete lunatic. They even go as far as to have a court case against him and throw him in a mental institution. It gets crazy when you see this movie and you realize just how many people think that he's crazy. One quote in this movie sums up the entire experience. Faith is believing in things when common sense tells you not to. I think we all know what that means. The performances are iconic. The story is timeless and meaningful, especially in today's culture. It doesn't even have to be about Santa Claus, it could be about the magic of Christmas itself. Take Santa Claus out of a movie, and the message of a movie would still be the same. Not only did this movie become legendary in Macy's long history, but did you know that this movie was not released in December, but June? Which would explain the strange yet very effective marketing campaign. By not only not referencing what the movie's actually about, but they even went as far as to not show a single scene from this movie. They never mentioned its Christmas themes, they never mentioned that it takes place on Christmas, they never even mentioned Santa Claus. In fact, on the posters, Santa Claus is not even there. He's way in the background. Posters made it seem like it was going to be a romance movie, but no. In fact, it's much more than that. With a cast that includes Maureen O'Hara, Edmund Gwenn as Kris Kringle, and a very young Natalie Wood, this movie is iconic for many different reasons. It was a movie where it mentioned two well-known department stores, including Macy's. The other is that it helped spread the word on the annual Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade. The movie was actually shot during an actual Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade, which is actually really interesting to see what the Macy's Thanksgiving Day was like back in 1947. Oh, and also, it's just a movie that's very simple in its message. It's one of the original feel-good movies. The title, Miracle on 34th Street, it's more of a metaphor. The miracle is about a kid learning that it's okay to believe in fairy tales. Oh, and here's another notable cast member I should mention. That right there is William Frawley, who would later be Fred Mertz on I Love Lucy. There were other adaptations of this story ranging from 1955 to 1994. All of them were flops. None of them could capture the magic and simplicity of the original. Yep, this movie is simply a classic. But viewer beware. Somebody thought it was really funny to colorize this movie. A good chunk of people have seen this movie in color. I am a purist, meaning I prefer to watch movies the way they were originally meant to be seen. I'm very much against colorization of black and white films. If a director, producer, whoever wanted it to be seen in black and white, then that's the way they were meant to be seen. I've only seen film colorization work at least 3 times, and all 3 of those times, the colorization work done to them was actually kind of decent. One of them was a movie, and the other 2 were TV shows. But anyway, back to Miracle on 34th Street. This is just a Christmas movie you cannot live without. Number 4. Buttons. When I first saw this movie about a year ago, I really enjoyed it, but I didn't really know what to say about it. And then I rewatched it recently, and now that I think back on all that has happened in 2020, I finally have something to say. Set during the 1900s or late 1800s, a guardian angel named Rose, played by Broadway legend Angela Lansbury, tells a story to a little girl named Emily. Emily was found in a box by the train station and was taken to a private hospital by a nun where she will stay the night. Emily wants more than anything to be adopted. In the meantime, Rose tells the story of Annabelle, living in a town called Millbury. No, that's Mulberry. This is Milberry. The two places are entirely different. Dick Van Dyke plays her guardian angel who shows up every now and then, her wife, to remind her to be happy, optimistic, and to remember that he is always with her. I consider him the best part of a movie. Yeah, Rose may have more lines, but every scene that he's in, all of them are very important. He just steals the show, and every time he's on screen, I just adore it. Her dad, a sea captain, was a very important person in her life. He would fill her head with wonder, enchantment, and encourage her to believe in fairy tales, imagination, and whatever her heart desired. But then the dad, while at sea, gets caught up in a violent storm and drowns. This causes Annabelle's world to turn upside down. No more fairy tales, no hope for herself, and no angels to believe in. As a result, things go from bad to worse for her and her mom. Without giving too much away, it gets dark. But thankfully, the dark aspects of a movie have a purpose. It's not like the movie's just showing dark stuff just for the sake of being dark. There is a purpose to it, and I'll get to it in a second. The characters are all relatable. Well, at least most of them. The girl playing Annabelle does a really good job, and I'm honestly surprised that she's able to really pull it off. I mean, she can sing, she can act, and she can actually pull off a good emotion here and there. Even the parents are played by actors who could deliver a good performance. John Gruffrud and Joya Bellows give very convincing performances as Annabelle's parents. The mom has a stepsister played by Kate McGrath. She is a cold and bitter person, she is the reason why the movie gets incredibly dark at the start of the second act. She not only despises her stepsister, not only does she hate the man she married, but she is very, very selfish. She runs a mill, and she also believes that Annabelle and the situation with her would ruin her quote-unquote reputation, whatever that means. There's a lot of dark themes in here. The dark aspects do kind of help elevate the message of the movie, including at the beginning of Annabelle's story, she gets scarlet fever, forced hard labor, child labor, the death of both Annabelle's parents. There's just a bunch of things happening in this movie. Simultaneously, as all of this is going on, there's a young couple who are looking to adopt a child, and one of them turns out to be Annabelle as an adult, which both of them, by the way, have opening narrations by Kate Winslet and Robert Redford. In a way, there are three stories going on here. The main story of Annabelle, and the two side stories with Emily and the adopted parents. It's really all about synchronicity, how each of the stories are interwoven in unexpected and divine ways. The movie's message is a very good one. It reminds me a lot of It's a Wonderful Life. This is a story of the power of faith and believing. It doesn't matter who you are, what religion you believe in, either you're rich or financially struggling. Things happen that require us to believe in something outside of ourselves. Both things are incredibly tough. We at the very least are not alone. There is someone watching us and protecting us every step of the way. If we have no faith in our guardian angels, then even they can't help us get through incredibly tough times. You don't have to be religious or spiritual to believe in angels and miracles. And given all that has happened in 2020, its message couldn't be any more clearer. In this day and age, a lot of people see one thing: fear and paranoia. In the midst of all this chaos, it's hard to really tell if someone is watching over us or not. And in my eyes, they're always with us, guiding us through these tough situations. There's more to it. It's also about how Emily opens her heart to the idea of adoption. She's worried that wife won't support her, that wife will be cruel to her again. Emily is afraid of being abandoned again as well. And through Annabelle's story, it helps open her heart to believing in hope. The angels were working behind the scenes to not only help Annabelle, but also Emily, and for both of them to meet. The music in the movie has a very whimsical tone to it, which, considering that this movie's independent, I enjoy the music in this movie. The songs, oh yes, the songs. Tim Janis not only wrote and directed the movie, but he also wrote the music and lyrics for the film. All of the songs, all 8 of them, they all fit really well. It's not like in other independent, low-budget, original musicals, like The Inspector General, for example, where the songs are just kind of there. They don't really serve much of a purpose, and thus they become distracting. Here, all the songs fit their intended purpose. The two numbers with Dick Van Dyke reminds her and us to be optimistic and to have imagination. The stuff with the parents is very dramatic in tone, but there was one song in this movie I swear reminded me a lot of Les Miserables. It really surprises me that a soundtrack was never released. I would have definitely bought the soundtrack, but one thing that hurt this movie, and I hate to say it, but it did hurt the movie somewhat, is that it was given a very limited release. It was one of those Phantom event things. You know those events where they show a movie or some kind of special event and you don't know if you'll ever see them again? That is what happened with Buttons. It premiered as a Phantom event movie on December 8th, 2018, and unfortunately I was not able to see it because I was working that day. I only caught small glimpses of the movie and that was it. I spent almost an entire year wondering whether or not I will ever see this movie. And Tim Janis was fortunate enough to hear our prayers because we asked him at least once or twice whether or not the movie was going to be released on DVD, to which he would give us an update as to when it would get a release. And our prayers were heard because 1 year later, it was released digitally and on DVD. The only place I could find this movie was at a Walmart, and when I finally found a Walmart that had a copy, it wasn't even on the shelves. I asked the manager if they had a copy of the film, and they did. The manager told me that they had 3 copies in the back. So, not only did they forget to put it out, but I was literally the only person who actually really wanted to see this movie. I'm glad I saw it. This is just a magical film that deserves to be seen, especially now, because we need this movie more than ever. Number 3. How the Grinch Stole Christmas. The original animated classic by Dr. Seuss and Chuck Jones. It's the story of a creature known simply as the Grinch, who lives on Mount Crumpet 50 feet or so above the town of Whoville. The Grinch despises Christmas, while the folks down at Whoville adore it with all their hearts. So the Grinch decides to steal it, preventing the Whos from celebrating Christmas. And that's it. I remember when I was in Seussical several years ago, we created our own opening for the show, which took place at a library. They had like these stack of Dr. Seuss books, and the librarian, there was somebody center stage who was playing a librarian. She was going like, do, do, do. I remember reading every single one of those books, and yes, they even have a Grinch. And I learned something that I never knew before. There are a lot of allegories and hidden meanings in Dr. Seuss's work. This one reminds us of the one thing that makes Christmas special. It's not what you buy for someone, it's how much you care about the spirit of Christmas. Yeah, you're noticing a theme here? And how much you care about others so much that makes Christmas wonderful. It's not about the things you buy from the store. It's not about the noise. And it's not about the overblown commercialism of Christmas. It's about what you do with it that matters. And this is something that the Grinch has yet to understand. Nobody really knows why the Grinch hates Christmas so much, and neither the book nor the special ever explicitly mentions why the Grinch hates it so much. But the one common theory is that he has no love in his heart, and that is something that he has yet to understand. I think that the Grinch is just a very simple character. He reminds me a lot of Ebenezer Scrooge, where all he sees is the overblown commercialism. All he hears is the constant chaos of the holidays. Kids playing with toys, busy, hectic rushing and everything, the singing Christmas carols and stuff. That's all he hears. He does not understand why people love Christmas with all their heart. This is his lesson. Then he learns about unconditional love. He learns about the joys and the gifts of the holidays. He learns that if you carry Christmas with all your heart, or any holiday, it doesn't have to be just Christmas, if you carry any holiday with all your heart, then that matters more than what you put underneath a tree. That matters more than what you give to somebody. The special is hosted by horror icon Boris Karloff as not only the narrator, but also the voice of the Grinch himself. The song You're a Mean One, Mr. Grinch is sung by the voice of Tony the Tiger for Ravenscroft, although he was never credited in the actual special. Chuck Jones directed the special, and you can tell he really liked the Grinch, because it seems like in every single scene with the Grinch, his facial movements are the main highlight of his character. I mean, you can tell the animators really liked animating the Grinch's face. I mean, Chuck Jones is a very good animator, but that's beside the point. In addition to the original book, Dr. Seuss also wrote the lyrics to the songs, and you can tell a lot of passion went into the creation of these songs. Well, there are 3 songs in it: Your Mean One, Mr. Grinch, Bahu Dores, also known as Welcome Christmas, and Trim Up a Tree. Overall, How the Grinch Stole Christmas is a human story. A story that reminds us that even though sometimes the holidays can make us feel snobby, the spirit of Christmas can make us feel once again jolly.
Talk about the Jim Carrey one! Talk about the Jim Carrey one!
You want me to talk about the Jim Carrey one, don't you? Okay. Basically, I just pretend it doesn't exist. The last time I saw it was probably 13, 15 years ago. I mean, I may rewatch it one of these years, but if I do watch it, it's gonna be sometime between after Thanksgiving to the end of November, so that if it's bad at all, at the very least, I can wash the bad taste out of my mouth with the good Grinch or the good holiday specials. I mean, the only thing I remember about it was the unnecessary backstory of the Grinch, and that Ron Howard directed it, and I love Ron Howard. That it had unnecessary adult humor in it. And then there's the new one that came out a couple years ago, which I never saw it, but I heard kind of like mixed things about it. Some people were saying that it was better than the Jim Carrey one. Others were saying that it was worse. In fact, recently, NBC just did one of their live musical specials on The Grinch. It was called The Grinch Musical Live, which was an adaptation of a Broadway musical that came out in 2006. Oh my god. It is, without a doubt, one of the worst holiday specials I have ever seen. It is one of the worst Christmas specials of all time. I have never, in my life, despised a Broadway musical before. But after watching 15 minutes of this thing, I can tell you, I am flabbergasted. I was in shock. Is it worse than this? No. No, it's not. I couldn't finish it. I really couldn't finish it. It really was that bad, guys. What was the point of writing all these Grinch movies? What was the point? Okay, you made the live action one. Who cares? Then you did the other one. You killed him again, and then you made the Grinch live, and then now he's dead. It's almost like the Grinch never learned his lesson. What was done well the first time should be left well enough alone. There is absolutely no reason why there is more than one adaptation of the Grinch. First there was the book, then the special, then the Jim Carrey one, then the animated one, and now the Grinch musical, and now it's like, I don't even know who the Grinch is anymore. The Lorax only got 2 adaptations. Then there's Horny Here's a Who. And what next? You're gonna do the same thing with Cat in the Hat? Oh my god. Once again, folks, we have another tie. Number 2. The Charlie Brown Christmas specials. Which one? All of them.
Oh, man. Alright. I gotta tell you this. I am a huge Peanuts fan. I know all the characters like I know all the characters from Tom's the Tank Engine. Charlie Brown, Linus, Lucy, Schroeder, Peppermint Patty, Marcy, Snoopy, Woodstock. I am such a big Peanuts fan. In fact, You're a Good Man, Charlie Brown is one of my favorite musicals of all time. Charles Schulz knew what he was doing when he was writing these characters. He wrote these characters in such a way that they were kids, but they talked like adults. So it was kind of that weird in-between, that weird mix between childhood and adulthood. Though the adults sounded like this. There are 4 Christmas specials that they did, totaling to about 2 hours. So basically, if you watched all 4 of them in a row in one sitting, you would have 2 hours of Charlie Brown Christmas specials. All of them are really good. All of them are different from one another. They're excellently made. Well, obviously we know which one's number 1, but how do they rank? In 4th place, we have I Want a Dog for Christmas, where Rerun, Linus' younger brother, wants a dog for Christmas, but he finds that to be easier said than done. I didn't watch it for many years until more recently, and then I was kind of like, oh yeah, this actually is kind of decent. So it's one of the newer Peanut specials. The bronze medal goes to Charlie Brown Christmas Tales, which is about 18 minutes long, making it the shortest Peanut special ever made. It's basically a package film with several different segments involving each of the characters. So there'd be one on Charlie Brown, there'd be another one on Linus, there'd be another one on Lucy, and so on. The silver medal goes to It's Christmas Time Again. Once again, another series of little moments with each of the characters. Each of the characters are doing different things. Probably close to being one of the best that they've ever made. One of the best. And the gold medal goes to, say it with me now, A Charlie Brown Christmas. Everybody has brought it up at least once. Everybody talks about it all the time. Everybody talks about how great it is. And yet very few of them have ever mentioned why. I mean, some people have. Some people have mentioned why, but I don't think very many people understood how special it truly was. Well, put on your thinking cap and let's finally discuss it.
Charlie Brown gets depressed during the holiday season mainly because he doesn't understand why Christmas is so special. It doesn't help that not only is he not liked, but each of the characters sees something different about the holidays. Snoopy sees it as an opportunity to win a house decorating contest, Sally sees it as a way to earn money, and so on. They even put on a Christmas play, but nothing seems to satisfy Charlie Brown.
See, this was one of the first specials to openly acknowledge the fact that Christmas is overblown and overly commercialized. It also brings up the fact that everybody sees Christmas in a completely different light. Not very many specials did that at the time. Most of the specials at that time were variety shows from people like Bob Hope and Judy Garland.
At some point, Linus mentions the Nativity story, where the three wise men, also known as the three magi, follow the star and the angel that led them to baby Jesus. Now, you have to remember something.
Before 1965, when this special came out, religion was never discussed, not to a great extent. There were some movies that came out that had Christian undertones, like The Day of the Easter Still, and if religion was ever discussed, it would be either hinted or not mentioned whatsoever. This explicitly mentions baby Jesus. It explicitly mentions Christ the Savior. And actually, when the filmmakers were making this, they thought, oh, we killed it, Peanuts is dead now, oh man, I'm so sorry. They thought it would be a flop. But how the people reacted blew people away for two reasons. Well, one reason was because it was a special that made us stop and think. It made us realize that Christmas is overly commercialized. It didn't start with decorating Christmas trees or putting presents under the tree or decorating the house or Christmas carols or anything like that. It originated from something so simple that would eventually become something extraordinary. And even if you're not religious, you can still understand what the special is trying to say. You can still understand the message that it's trying to get across. The Christmas play doesn't matter. But Snoopy winning the decorating contest doesn't matter. Sally wanting money doesn't matter. The thing that Lucy wants doesn't matter. What matters is what Charlie Brown discovers. What matters is that Charlie Brown goes from being depressed over the holidays because even though he likes getting gifts and presents and Christmas cards and all that, he's still not happy, to understanding the simplicities, that you need to take the holidays, scale it back down to something simple. And that simplicity will make you more joyful and happy than any Christmas song you hear on the radio.
Second, the special won an Emmy for Best Children's Programming, one of several Emmys that Charles Schulz would win in later years.
These are just specials that are so iconic and so memorable that when they end, you want to watch them again before December is through.
All the Christmas specials are excellent. It's all thanks to relatable characters, memorable life lessons, smart writing by Charles Schulz, a comic strip that is still in print today, and the cherry on top of his wonderful holiday sundae, an iconic jazz score by Vince Guaraldi, who would do the music for all of the Peanuts specials from the 60s to the 70s.
And that is something that most modern Christmas movies and specials, that's the one ingredient that they're missing out on. Heart.
The world of Christmas specials wouldn't be the same without these timeless, iconic, and memorable pieces of TV history. And plus, who doesn't love Snoopy?
I love spending Christmas with these guys. And I hope you do too.
Hark the herald angels sing, glory to the newborn King.
And on the same entry, A Christmas Carol. Which one? Any of them. If they are called A Christmas Carol or Scrooge, if it was based on the Charles Dickens book in any way, then it counts. There are so many adaptations of this story that people who have never seen a single film adaptation of the book but have read the actual book will be very confused as to which is the best adaptation to watch. Let me shorten the list for you and let me give you my recommendations. I recommend the Mickey Mouse version, the Ashtar Swim version, and the Jim Carrey version from 2009. Oh, I've also heard that the George C. Scott version is good too. Everyone knows the story, but for those of you who need a recap, Ebenezer Scrooge is a very bitter man about Christmas because his business partner, Jacob Marley, died 7 years before on Christmas Eve. That night, Scrooge, because it's easier to say Scrooge instead of Ebenezer, is visited by Jacob, held by chains, and is forced to spend eternity carrying the shame and regret of his wife. He tells Scrooge that he'll be visited by 3 spirits. Each one are representations of Scrooge's life, his past, present, and future. We get to know his bookkeeper, Bob Cratchit, who's financially struggling, has a big family, and a son, Tiny Tim, with a horrible illness. I don't know if anyone cares, but for many years I actually wondered what kind of illness Tiny Tim actually had, and a certain type of kidney failure and rickets were 2 possibilities. Both of them were treatable at the time that Charles Dickens wrote A Christmas Carol, but if they weren't treated, they would become fatal. That would make the line that Tiny Tim would die if the shadows remain unaltered by the future very, very significant. Meaning that if Scrooge doesn't give Bob Cratchit the money that he needs to treat Tiny Tim, then he would most surely die. I overanalyze things too much. You see these 2 guys who want Scrooge to donate money, but Scrooge refuses out of fear that if he gives money to the poor, he himself will become bankrupt. You see Scrooge's uncle who is filled with Christmas spirit, and you get to know each of the spirits, all with different forms and personalities. This is a story of hope and redemption. That just because you have lost your way in terms of feeling that spirit of Christmas, it doesn't mean that you are beyond hope. We see that Scrooge was actually a pretty good kid until he ran a business where corporate greed got him away, turning everyone he knew away from him. And after Marley died, his hatred for the holidays grew more intense. Every adaptation offers something different. The Mickey Mouse version is a straightforward, basic introduction to the story. It allows newcomers to understand the themes and plot, while also allowing younger audiences the chance to get to know the original story without having to read the actual book. So I recommend that if you want just kind of a basic overview of the story. If you want a more advanced version, go with the Jim Carrey version or the George C. Scott version. Or if you really want to go old school, go with the Ashtar Swim or Seymour Hicks version called Scrooge. You're probably wondering, what is the Seymour Hicks version? Well, the reason why a lot of people don't know it is because it's not called A Christmas Carol. It's called Scrooge, which would probably explain why every single time I talk to anyone about it, they've never heard of it. And there's a reason, because it wasn't called A Christmas Carol, it was called Scrooge. That would obviously make sense. Every single adaptation has its own thing that makes it stand out. I mean, the endings are always the same, but sometimes they have different openings, different characters, or sometimes they have a combination of the two. A lot of people have portrayed Ebenezer Scrooge, ranging from Seymour Hicks to Ashtar Swim, Jim Carrey, Reginald Owen, George C. Scott, Michael Caine from The Muppet Special. I'm literally recording this voiceover and I just remembered Michael Caine played Scrooge in the Muppet version. Oh my god. So many people have portrayed Ebenezer Scrooge. But which one is the best? Well, it's entirely up to you which one is the better version. I say this is one that is just a given. Everyone watches at least one of these a year, sometimes even 2. Just because you may not be feeling the Christmas spirit, or maybe you're a business guy who's too busy to understand the joys and appreciation of Christmas, that doesn't mean that you are beyond hope. Doesn't mean that you will never understand the joys of Christmas. It doesn't mean that you spend your life never knowing what Christmas actually is all about. And this story perfectly illustrates it, that it's not too late. You can still find meaning and appreciation in Christmas. You don't have to just look at the over-commercialism and the busy and hectic schedules of Christmas. You can find beauty and joy in it. And as Scrooge would learn in the story, Christmas is more than just the season of giving.
Now, of course, I am missing out on some very well-known holiday specials. A lot of them.
A lot of people have brought up The Small One as an underrated Christmas gem.
They've also mentioned Joe X Noel, which was about the Christmas truce of 1914 during World War I. The Holiday, that's another one that gets brought up. This list was never about the best Christmas specials of all time. This list is about my personal favorite holiday specials that I watch every single year. Everybody has their own opinions as to which films and specials are considered the best. Here, in full display, are my honorable mentions. The specials and movies that I have seen and do watch, but I could not fit them on this list. Holiday Affair with Robert Mitchum and Janet Leigh, decent romantic comedy from 1949. It's got some heart to it, kind of funny at times. It's not bad. Blossoms in the Dust, it's not a Christmas movie or a winter movie. This is a true story movie that deserves to be seen. It's criminally underrated. Fred Claus, this is actually kind of enjoyable. Santa Claus's brother arrives at the North Pole and screws everything up. It's pretty funny. Vince Vaughn, Paul Giamatti as Santa Claus. It's pretty good for what it is. I definitely consider it a very enjoyable film. A Muppet Family Christmas, which is a underrated Muppet Christmas special that gets swept under the rug all the time, and it doesn't even have a official DVD release. All these characters go to this cottage, and Kermit and Miss Piggy are running late and everything, hoping I'm getting the plot right. A Christmas Story. Now, I have seen this at least twice. It has this weird kind of humor to it that's not for everybody, but I've enjoyed it for what it is. It's another movie that reminds us that Christmas is overly commercialized and overblown, and it reminds us about the simple things that, make us human. Holiday Inn, this is a good one, but it's not a Christmas movie. Christmas is more like the bookends of the film. It starts on Christmas and ends at Christmas, but it talks about all the other holidays. But this was the first appearance of the classic song White Christmas, so that's why it's worth watching sometime maybe after Christmas or something. Bad Santa. Oh man, I love this one. I consider this the anti-Christmas movie. Same way that people consider Die Hard and Reindeer Games and Black Christmas are all like anti-Christmas movies. This I consider as my personal favorite. Just mean-spirited mall Santa. Tony Cox is his assistant. John Ritter plays this guy who's like trying to keep everything under control, family friendly and everything. Bernie Mac, oh, it's so good. This is hilarious. I recommend watching this after Christmas so you get some last minute Christmas comedies thrown into your Christmas playlist before you have to put away the decorations and stuff. But that is funny. It's hilarious. I love that movie. Christmas for $1. Now, if this was an independent movie, it's basically about this family that's going through a depression, and the dad saved up $1, and so his family uses that dollar to get each other gifts. And there's this little boy who is a big fan of Hopalong Cassidy and wants to ride a horse, even though he has a disability. Not bad for what it is. It's well intended, but I think people would not like the acting in it. It's a little hokey. Other than that, I think it's okay. Alright, if I spend the rest of this video talking about honorable mentions, we'd be here all week because there's so many. I can't even wrap my head around how many there are. Let us now get to my number one, my personal favorite holiday special that I watch every year. What you're about to see is not only my favorite holiday movie, but it is also one of my favorite films of all time.
And my number one favorite holiday special or movie is It's a Wonderful Life. George Bailey is a free-spirited guy who wants to see the world. He is a familiar face in the little town of Bedford Falls, but no matter how hard he tries, something delays his travel plans. Part of it is out of his good nature. That's the reason why he decides to stay and help out Bedford Falls instead of thinking about his dreams and ambitions. And also, if he decides to think about himself and leave on his travel plans, Henry Potter, yes, that's his name, who's the richest man in Bedford Falls, will ruin Bedford Falls altogether, considering that he owns everything in the town with the exception of the Bailey family bank. The movie takes its time establishing who George is, who his friends, acquaintances, and enemy Henry Potter are, and what happens in his life. We find out what makes him a good person, including, but not limited to, saving his brother's wife when they were kids from drowning in the ice, saving his boss's wife from poisoning himself over the death of his son, and building brand new homes to the citizens of Bedford Falls, to name a few. At some point, All of the delays, the responsibilities of keeping Bedford Falls intact, and remaining trapped there finally breaks George, and he just can't take it anymore. The final straw involved a guy under his watch. He accidentally gave it to Potter, and Potter refused George's offer of a life insurance policy. This is the moment where he decides to take his own life. An angel named Clarence, who is trying to get his wings, is sent from heaven to help him. At the beginning of the movie, an archangel heard the people of Bedford Falls praying for them to help George, and he asks Clarence to help him help George, where he learns everything I just told you. This beginning part may throw first-time viewers off, but keep watching because the movie is very inspiring. Like with Buttons, it's about synchronicity, how things are interwoven beyond our understanding. It's about celebrating the most important thing of all, life. How one's life changes so many others. To appreciate your life no matter what obstacles you had to put up with in your life. And just like with Buttons, this movie reminds us that angels are always with us. We may not see them, but we can talk to them, and they do hear us even if we can't see them. And even if you don't believe in guardian angels or spirituality, the movie offers something else, something just as equally important. You should never deal with tough or hard to handle situations by yourself. Having a group of people to help you deal with difficult situations is a very important thing. As George learns, no one should be without friends. And in 2020, I'm sure a lot of people felt as though their lives were over due to everything that has happened this year. Their lives frozen, their goals and plans put on hold, their fears and anxieties raised, most not knowing when the pandemic will be over. The message of the film does not apply to strictly 2020, but any time of year. Any time of year you feel lost, trapped, helpless, and scared. Scared that you're on your own to deal with tough situations. Scared you feel trapped, held bound by too many responsibilities and not living your dreams. The point is, this movie reminds us that while things look bad, that doesn't mean you should throw your whole life away or wish you'd never been born. As George learns that without him, Bedford Falls wouldn't exist. The movie takes us to an alternate reality where it asks the question, where would his friends be? Where would his life be without him? If he never existed, how would their lives turn out? We experience a Twilight Zone scenario where everyone is either rude, miserable, or mean-spirited. All of his friends, colleagues, and even his wife and parents live sad lives. The town is now like a darker and bleaker version of Las Vegas. This is in sharp contrast to what George did to Bedford Falls. This paints a bleak picture as to where would life be without George Bailey. The performances are amazing. This is easily my favorite James Stewart performance. He was an actor who could play the everyman. In fact, interesting story, this movie was not only his comeback performance, but also his form of therapy. As you watch the film, take note of his performance. He enlisted in World War II because he wanted to fly fighter planes. They originally said no. They eventually did agree to let him fly fighter planes, and when he did, he had severe trauma afterwards. As the movie goes on, you can actually see him channeling that trauma and projecting it out into his character, projecting it out for all of us to see. It makes the performance much more believable. The rest of the cast is great too. We have Donna Reed as his future wife, Lionel Barrymore as the cruel Henry Potter, Henry Travers as Clarence, and Carolyn Grimes as George's younger daughter Zuzu, who has the most famous line in the movie. I love this movie so much that I have 2 copies of this movie. One of them was signed by Carolyn Grimes. Yes, I met Zuzu herself, who gave us some really fascinating behind-the-scenes information about this movie, which I will talk about some other time. This movie is, in a word, spiritual. A film that reminds us that life is the greatest gift of all. And that when you have friends, you are not a failure.
Look, Daddy, teacher says every time a bell rings, an angel gets his wings.
That's right. That's right.
Oh, and there's also a colorized version, but I recommend you don't watch it. I mean, if you have seen it in color, whatever, fine. But for any of you newcomers out there, I don't recommend you watch this movie in color. It's also my favorite Frank Capra movie. And I love Frank Capra. 2020, huh? What a year. Before we say that 2020 was a horrible, horrible year, we need to step back and think for a minute. What did we learn from 2020? I believe that what we learned was that the things that we were doing before, the routines and strategies that were put in place before, weren't working anymore. As a result, we had to create new routines and be more conscientious of ourselves. We had to be more open-minded to be more kinder to one another and ourselves. In essence, it did bring people together, even if we had lost people in the process. In a way, we became more aware of humanity. We became more open-minded to the possibilities of who we are. While we were all in quarantine, twice, depending on what state you live in, we learned new things. We took up different occupations. I myself was learning how to play the piano. I was working on my writing skills. For you, it may be different. Maybe you wanted to be a chef, but were too busy to take the time to learn how to cook. Maybe you wanted to take up knitting or sewing, but again, you were caught up in your job or something prevented you from doing so. Other people probably learned how to dance. We realized that we can learn new things, that we can do more with ourselves. We can explore other avenues. Some people didn't understand. Some people did not realize that staying home would be beneficial. That staying home and staying safe and protecting yourself from the COVID virus would eventually help you become a much better person. By staying home and not always watching Netflix or the news, you took up other avenues, explored new interests. You wanted to learn science, you wanted to learn knitting, you wanted to learn how to dance, you wanted to be a chef. You took up all these different interests. And as you took on the responsibility of exploring your interests, you took action. You said, hey, I had interest in this for a long time, but I couldn't because I didn't have the resources or the time to do so. And as a result, you took it upon yourselves to learn how to knit, learn how to dance, learn how to be a chef, learn how to play the piano or some other musical instrument like a guitar or a flute or something. Some people saw quarantine as a good thing. Others saw it as imprisonment. And others thought their lives were done, that the world had ended. But we're still here because we have a fighting chance. Because we believe in the potential of what can be. This virus, instead of it weakening us, it only made us stronger. We are light years ahead from where we were back in 1918, when the first real serious pandemic in the United States broke out. Now, let's take all that we have learned, all of the new skills that we have learned, taking what's in here and putting it out there in the universe. I'm looking forward to the possibilities of what 2021 will bring. I can use what I have learned and help others, like I just did right now. And here's to 2021, the year of possibilities.